Hey guys, it's Thermal Greasemuck here, and I'm back once again with another video. In this video, I wanted to test a little bit, does core count really matter? I know on a lot of newer CPUs, the higher up you go, the more cores you get, the more cache you get, and the better clock speeds you get. But I wanted to see a little bit about some of the older platforms, where you might have gone up in more cores, but the clock speeds might have gone down a little bit in return. I wanted to see, is core count really going to matter on some of these older chips? So I went back to the X99 platform and I decided to test all 7 CPUs I have. For our 6 core CPUs, I took the average of the 5820, 5930, 6800, and 6850K. For the 8 core, I took the average of the 5960X and 6900K CPUs, and for our 10 core, we have the 6950X. Paired with all of them, we have 32 gigs of RAM, as well as a GTX 1660 Super to kind of see what is going to be the biggest difference. Is core count going to matter? Is cache going to matter? Is clock speed going to matter? All of these things together, is it really going to make a very big difference between all the different CPUs? Starting things off, I tested 2 games. I initially was going to test 3, but unfortunately Forza Horizon 5 wouldn't install, and it kept saying that I had no internet, even though I had internet, and unfortunately I couldn't install it, so I was only able to test CS2 and Black Ops 6. So to kick things off, we'll start with CS2. Initially between them, there is a little bit of a difference. Between the 6 and 8 core chips, it's a pretty small difference. I'll throw up the minimum numbers. I tested everything at every graphic setting, but at 1080p low is really where you're going to kind of see the difference here, and that's where I'll throw the metrics up for the most part here. So for our 6-core CPUs, on average, between all 4 of them, they were averaging about 231 FPS with 110 FPS for our 1% lows. Moving over to the 8-core, it's a slight bump. 236 for the averages and 106 for the 1% lows. And for the 10 core, there is a noticeable jump, 261 FPS with the 109 FPS for the 1% lows. Overall, I mean, they do a really good job, and it is a really nice to see between the spread. Something that was a little bit surprising, that the 10 core actually did show a little bit more performance. But as you go through the graphics settings, it stays fairly similar. Even if you increase the graphics settings, it's small and nominal jumps between them. As you lower the graphics settings, it does tend to widen the gap a little bit, but it's not by a whole lot. Moving things over to Black Ops 6, we run into the same problem. Small nominal jumps between them. Starting with the 6 cores, I ran everything at minimum settings for 1080p just to really stretch it and see how far we could push these things. So for the 6 core, it was averaging about 106 FPS, with the 5 and 1% lows being 91 and 87 FPS. For our 8 cores, we were averaging 115 FPS, with our 5 and 1% lows being 101 and 96. And with the 10 core, averaging 124 FPS, with 105 and 100 FPS for the 5 and 1% lows. A marginal jump between them, and something that kind of starts to make a little bit more sense. But I wanted to see, even with these averages, when I was testing all the CPUs between the different core counts, I noticed they were all very similar in arriving at their very similar averages. We were usually between a couple FPS between each other when testing all of these CPUs. So when going back and started to do some research, something I tended to notice was the architectures. Moving from Haswell to Broadwell, between them, the 5000 series ones being Haswell and the 6000 being Broadwell, Haswell actually has a little bit more L1 cache. The 5820K and 5930K get 64 kilobytes of L1 cache. L2 is 256 kilobytes and 15 megabytes for L3 cache. Moving over to Broadwell, yes, it has a newer architecture and slight clock speed bumps, but it only has 32 kilobytes for L1 cache. Still 256 for L2 and 15 megabytes for L3, but they were all very similar. And how the product stack kind of works between the generations is also very similar. You'll have an initial 6-core being the 5820K and 6800K, which will get 28 PCIe lanes. Then you'll have your step-up 6-core chip, which will get the full 40 PCIe lanes and slight bumps in clock speed, being the 5930K and 6850K. Then you'll get your 8-core option, which will be your 5960X and 6900K, and in Broadwell's case, they also gave a 10-core, being the 6950X. Looking at the 8 cores, though, we run into the same thing. The Haswell 5960X, 64 kilobytes for L1 cache, 256 for L2, and 20 megabytes for L3. 6900K, only 32 kilobytes for L1, 256 for L2, and 20 megabytes for L3. And looking at the 6950X, we're at 32 for L1 cache, 256 for L2, but 25 megabytes for L3 cache, which definitely plays a factor. The clock speed is really not a big difference, and most of these CPUs have roughly the same clock speeds. They're all boosting to about 3.5 to 4 gigahertz on average between all of these CPUs. So the clock speed isn't really going to make a big difference between any of them. A lot of it is going to be the microarchitecture, and it's going to be the cache. And it makes sense that although the older architecture isn't quite as efficient, it also has more L1 cache overall, which kind of evens the playing field and makes them very similar. So kind of wrapping this video up, I wanted to say that these CPUs are all still great options. Probably not the 6950X, because that chip usually goes for about 100 to 150 bucks, so probably avoid that as of the time of making this video. In the future, if it drops in price, it can make sense as a 10-core, 20-thread CPU. But at the time of making this video, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But the 6-core CPUs, the Haswell 5820K and 5930K, are going for like 10 to 20 bucks. And the 6800 and 6850Ks you can usually find for like 20 to 25. So I'd probably jump Haswell between the two chips because they tend to be a little bit cheaper and you're getting identical performance across the board. Broadwell, it can make sense, and overall you can boost your RAM a little bit more if you're overclocking it. It can make a little bit more sense, but it still kind of makes it hard to justify. As far as it goes for the 8-core ones, it's the same sort of thing. Slight difference in price. The 5960X is usually somewhere between 40 to 50 bucks. I got mine for about 45 when I bought it, and the 6900K, usually about 50 to 60 bucks. I ended up buying mine for like 60, which was unfortunate, but they deviate in price all the time. So that would be my recommendation. If you're buying one of these CPUs and you're just planning on gaming, this 6-core will do plenty and handle itself just fine in a majority of games you're going to be playing. If you do plan on doing a little bit of streaming or you're doing a little bit of production work, the 8-core can make sense though. You can get a bit more performance in gaming, but it really only makes sense if you're going to be doing additional stuff aside from gaming. But all of them are still a fantastic choice and do a great job. If you guys want to see more videos like this, if you guys can leave some comments, I do plan on in the future doing a video with some of these X99 chips and pairing them with a TPM 2.0 module with these motherboards to see if we can play some of these games that require secure boot and TPM 2.0, if these modules work at all. I also plan in the future on taking one of these CPUs and pairing it with a much more modern, much more powerful graphics card to see if these CPUs from 9 and 11 years ago respectively can still hold up with a more modern, more powerful GPU. So if you guys want to see some videos like that, if you guys can hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you guys will get notifications for when these videos are going to be going up. As well as if you guys can hit that like button if you guys are enjoying my videos, really means a lot. If you guys didn't like it, feel free to hit the dislike button, totally understand, and leave some comments for some other videos you guys want to see me do. So I will see you guys next time, and have a great rest of your week. Later, guys.